Pete and Jimmie's inevitable duel, the characters from Stephen Crane's Maggie, A Girl of the Streets, as members of the neo-chivalric cult. As Dr. Isekemeyer states in the lecture, the morals of the characters in Stephen Crane's Maggie, A Girl of the Streets, are often derived from the theater and even displayed as such drama. One man never to exclude in a conversation about English theater is, of course, Shakespeare, and interestingly, Paul Siegel writes about chivalry in Shakespeare and the neo-chivalric cult of honor. He tells of two different ideas of chivalric honor, the Christian humanist ideal of honor and the neo-chivalric cult of honor. The first is an old concept often concerned with the serving of one's country and prince, but, contrary to the neo-chivalrism, Christian humanism could not reconcile with the duel and the taking of private revenge. However, Shakespeare's work contains these elements very often. So when Shakespeare's protagonists seek revenge, their aim is usually in strict accord with Cicero's dictum that no one should do harm to another unless provoked by wrong. A quote by Watson in Siegel. Hamlet, Laertes, and Macduff seek revenge for the death of a kin, Romeo for the death of a friend, and Othello for the presumed betrayal by his wife, a robbing of honor. In the neo-chivalric cult, however, honor is not concerned with public service, as C.L. Barber has shown in The Idea of Honor in the English drama. It is concerned with maintaining the reputation for the personal courage and the spirit sensitive to anything remotely resembling a slight deemed to be proper for a man of birth. Jimmie and his mother applied these theatrical morals in the illusion of coming from a good house. They are very concerned with their good upbringing by a good mother, etc., even though they live in a housing project and the drunk and violent mother keeps breaking all their furniture. The neo-chivalric cult of honor is expounded in the dueling treatises. It stems primarily from the chivalric notion of personal military glory. Siegel, page 3. This is something Jimmie and Pete brag about constantly. In the slums, there's little other glory. The neo-chivalric cult of honor consisted of the artificial rules of a decadent chivalry which set the devotee apart from ordinary mortals, even to the point of violating conventional morality, also from Siegel. To have this honor, to feel chivalrous, creates an illusion of being better than the bottom feeders of the slums. Jimmie and Pete want to both be above the lowest societal class, but are not. They see themselves as chivalrous and therefore at least middle class, which fuels the feeling to maintain their moral standards. Nonetheless, they are not applicable to the world they live in. The neo-chivalric cult of honor demanded an extreme sensitivity to anything which might be construed as an affront, and the man of honor's word was not to be questioned. Funnily and very fittingly to Pete, James Cleland in his courtesy book The Institution of a Young Nobleman comments satirically on the practice of consulting a friend expert in terms of honor to determine whether or not one had been insulted. This is exactly like the last scene of Pete, where he feels insulted by the waiter and asks, "He insult me. I'm German. Can't stand be insult. I'm going to lick him when he comes." "No, no," cried the woman. "Didn't he insult me?" "No." "Sure he didn't insult me?" "No, no." "Well then, I'm gonna apologize." Crane, pages 55 to 56. I have not read Terms of Honor, but Crane seems to make an even more fun of the chivalrous man's insecurities. To sum it up, a member of the neo-chivalric cult is concerned with maintaining the reputation for their personal courage, is decadent to the point that conventional morals do not apply to him, is sensitive to insults of their person, honor, or family, is not to be accused of lying, and maintains these aspects of their honor through duels. In the context of epic and chivalry, many arguments point to Pete and Jimmie's staging a slum duel, like Hector and Achilles in the Iliad by Homer. The side that has supposedly stolen the precious, beautiful woman from the other side has the advantage of the home ground. In the Iliad, Troy, and in Maggie, the bar Pete works in. The attacker therefore needs the numbers advantage. In the Iliad, this is a huge army. In Maggie, it's Jimmie's friend. But before we get into the scene, one thing wondered me about the fight that led to further research. I have watched many modern slum movies, like, for example, Boys in the Hood, and so the first thing I noticed about the duel of Pete and Jimmie is the absence of weapons, especially firearms. To find out why, I decided to have a closer look at dueling during the late 19th century and found contradictory fin de siècle reform, German masculinity, the academic honor code, and the movement against the pistol duel in universities from 1890 to 1914 by Lisa Featherangel Zwicker. The book begins with the quote, "The pistol remains the weapon of cripples, the senile, and those affected with a communicable disease. The murder instrument of the highwayman, the dastardly, insidious pistol, is the preferred weapon of the officer." Hugo Böttger, editor of the Burschenschaftliche Blätter. Zwicker notes in the historiography of the duel that it became highly prevalent in Austria, France, Hungary, Poland, and Russia in the late 19th century. Maggie was published in 1893. Even though Maggie takes place in the US, Crane probably knew of the popularity of duels because of his military education and his interest in Europe, which later manifests itself in him becoming an expatriate in England. In Italy, Stephen Hughes sees a dueling mania and argues that the practice of the duel could assist in legitimizing the middle-class elite. These morals are once again not applicable to the Bowery inhabitants, Pete and Jimmie. Nonetheless, they try to. Zwicker explains that dueling had a social exclusivity to the students because the students saw themselves as an academically educated elite, meant to be the future leaders. Perhaps Jimmie and Pete wish to be elites too. We do know of either superiority complexes. Pete at one point states, "Those mocks can't face me. They knows I can whip up the street with any three of them." Crane, page 19. And the description of Jimmie's ego is even more detailed. He maintained a belligerent attitude toward all well-dressed men. To him fine raiment was allied to weakness, and all good coats covered faint hearts. He and his orders were kings, to a certain extent, of the men of untarnished clothes, because these later dreaded, perhaps, to be either killed or laughed at. Above all things, he despised obvious Christians and ciphers with these chrysanthemums of aristocracy in their buttonholes. He considered himself above these classes. He was afraid of neither the devil nor the leader of society. Crane, page 14. Pete and Jimmie are the elite and future leaders, not of society or their country, but of the Bowery, or at least they believe so themselves. They were not elevated to this position by their academic education, but their physical superiority and willingness to prove this superiority through violence did so. After all, they are schooled in fighting or street dueling since birth. So when Jimmie sees his family's honor hurt, he sees no other option but to do what he always did. Fight until his legs no longer carry him. Like the Greek in the Iliad, he gathers his forces of one Bowery man to battle his newfound foe. The way the bar is described by Pete earlier when he tells his fighting stories, and in the beginning of chapter 11 as a place to create rage, gives the impression of an arena in which the Bowery men can have their chivalrous duels. The further descriptions of the place give it an epic aura of devout rituals. The pub with its undisturbed pyramids of shimmering glass, the mahogany appearing sideboard, and the walls plastered with olive and bronze tints of imitation leather acts as a false temple. Notice that the place is only mahogany appearing, and the leather is only an imitation. The arena is a place of false theatric glory, a playhouse of inapplicable morals. The personification, the open mouth of the saloon, also gives the impression of it being some sort of dangerous trap that devours the misguided men of the Bowery. Like many great duels in theater and movies, every proper duel begins with a fight of words. The party that seeks conflict needs to insult the other thoroughly enough to awake their aggression too. Members of chivalric cult are sensitive to verbal insults of their person, but while in the usual insult part of a duel, both sides try to show their mental and linguistic superiority. The Bowery boys' limited English capabilities resolve in a long exchange of "What the hell's?" and "Don't make no trouble." In their entire pre-fight conversation of redundancy, the men's true motives come to the surface. Neither of them mentions Maggie at any point, whom this conflict is seemingly about. Instead, neither falls short of boastings about their own strength, revealing that this fight is truly about themselves. It is about their superiority, manliness, and decadence. The woman is only a tool that allows for a fight between the two men who see themselves as the strongest in the Bowery to decide who is superior. When the moment of battle arrives, the men fall into primary animalistic versions of themselves. They forget all about the morals they always display on the surface and let their instincts guide them through the fight. With the eyes of panthers, the pride of roosters, the bravery of bulldogs, and the swiftness of cats, the men leap upon one another. The lack of weapons here could yet be another symbol of their primitiveness. Finally, Jimmie flees from a policeman while leaving his companion behind. He loses the primitive honor of battle and superiority over Pete he has so longed for, as well as the theatrical morality that supposedly led him there, by cowardly forsaking his friend. Maggie was never even of interest in this fight.